born after this date, every single day of your life, there have been humans in space on board the International Space Station.
For the past 2 decades, the International Space Station has been a place where the world can come together to conduct science.
Today, we're celebrating 20 years of continuous human presence on the International Space Station by talking to some of the amazing people who had a chance to live and work there.
Learn all about the science being done in our floating laboratory, as well as what it takes to be an astronaut.
This is STEM in 30.
Hi, I'm Beth.
And I'm Marty, and welcome to the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum's Stephen F. Udvar-Hazy Center in Chantilly, Virginia.
Continuous human spaceflight began 20 years ago this month with the arrival of Expedition 1 to the International Space Station for the first long-duration stay aboard the station.
Since then, over 240 people from 19 different nations have visited the International Space Station.
We are standing next to Space Shuttle Discovery, one of NASA's workhorses, which took, among other things, components of the International Space Station into space.
The International Space Station that soars above us today was not built all at once 20 years ago. Starting in 1998, rockets launched from Russia and space shuttles from the United States carried pre-built modules into space that would form the ISS. These modules could be strung together or detached and rearranged. They were built by different countries and had never been fit together before going into space.
Large modules to the ISS continued until 2011, when the United States stopped the shuttle program.
Liftoff, the final liftoff of Atlantis.
Despite this, smaller additions to the ISS continue today.
The world looked very different 20 years ago. Let's head over to NASA astronaut John Harrington to find out what was popular 20 years ago.
Hi, my name is John Harrington. I was a former NASA astronaut. I flew an STS-113 and I helped assemble the space station, and that was 20 years ago. This is what happened 20 years ago. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram did not exist. PlayStation 2 was released. People still used cameras with film. I did a spacewalk with a Nikon 35mm film camera, and I took, of the 36 exposures on it, I only took 35 because you don't want to take the last one because it can actually break the film when you come back in. And you bring the camera back in and it floats for about 24 hours and it thermostabilizes, because if you roll the film back really quick, you get little lightning bolts through the negatives. The Nokia 3310 was the best-selling cell phone. The iPhone weren't released for another 7 years. I had a flip phone, AAA, BBB, CCC. Hard to do text messages with one thumb. George Bush defeated Al Gore to become the 43rd President of the United States. Hanging Chads and the Supreme Court. Remember that very well. Unknown British actors Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint were cast in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. The final Peanuts comic strip was published. That's sad. The first resident or long-term crew arrives at the International Space Station. Bill Shepard, Navy SEAL, was the first commander. He called it Space Station Alpha, if you knew that, when he first flew. And they brought a Navy bell so you could ring aboard the new visiting commanders. You could ring them aboard. A lot has happened in 20 years. I'm glad I played a part in it.
We get a lot of questions about the International Space Station and what it's like to live and work in space.
Like, what's it like to float in space? What does astronaut food taste like? Or how long is the International Space Station?
To answer that last question, we'll be using this bus behind me.
An average school bus is 35 feet long.
The International Space Station is about 357 feet long, which is 10 times the length of an average school bus.
We've collected questions from some students, and we've asked them to our astronaut friends and some colleagues at the National Air and Space Museum.
Hi, I'm Mira. Can you call your family while you're in space? Nowadays, we can call at any time during the day with basically what is equivalent to an internet phone or internet-based phone. So I spoke with my wife every single day. Sometimes I spoke with my kids every day. And then once a week we had video conferences with the whole family.
Hi, my name is Maya. Can I see the space station from Earth?
Yes, you can. And we have a video that can help you find the International Space Station in the night sky.
Hi, my name is Neil, and I want to know, why do we need a space station?
The purpose of the International Space Station is really to understand more about living in space. And if we intend to go and leave Earth, go to other places like the Moon and Mars and stay there for a very long time, the International Space Station becomes a really wonderful place to study the effects of space on the human body. Much of what happens on the space station, and you have to remember that 50% of the astronauts' time is spent on research, that some of those results could be turned around and make certainly life better here on Earth.
Hi, I'm Bridget. What does the commander of the International Space Station do?
Kind of managing all the other people on board. So, for instance, I wanted my people to work really hard, but I had to make sure they didn't work too hard so that you're just worn out, all right? So it's kind of managing them as a person, how they're doing. And also, if the bad day does happen and we have an emergency, then the commander, me in this case, would be the one kind of directing folks and making the hard decisions on site if needed.
Hi, my name's Jackson. How do we get to the International Space Station?
Well, I took the Russian Soyuz, and it's a wonderful system. It's an old design, but they've been constantly upgrading it over the decades. Very reliable, very robust, and they've been doing it a long time. Very safe system, very quick, 8.5 minutes up to low Earth orbit, and just a few hours to undock and separate, and then return to Earth.
Along with Soyuz, the SpaceX Dragon has successfully sent people to the International Space Station. And soon the Boeing Starliner will be doing the same. We got to talk to an astronaut whose Soyuz trip didn't go as planned. What was supposed to be astronaut Nick Hague's first trip to the ISS had to be aborted during launch. We talked to Nick and astronaut Ann McClain about the experience.
A launch abort is a pretty bad day. When we aborted, at the moment that we aborted, we were about 32 miles above the Earth and we were going 4,000 miles an hour. And a couple pieces of the rocket ran into each other and caused the rocket to kind of come apart underneath us, disintegrate. And at the moment that the computers on board sensed that we weren't traveling as fast as we should be and we weren't pointed in quite the right direction, the abort system, the escape tower, pulled us off of the rocket and pulled us clear of all of that debris and then started us on our way back down. And so those are safety systems. Those are examples of systems that we put into place to protect us on the days when we don't do it right. Something had happened, some mistake had been made, and it prevented us from achieving the mission we wanted to that day. But the first priority is protecting the crew. And you'll see that on all of our vehicles, whether it's SLS or it's a SpaceX or it's Boeing, when we're launching crew, we have these safety systems in place to make sure that those crews come home to us.
A lot of people have asked what it was like for us to launch after that abort. Were we more worried? Were we had a heightened sense of what could go wrong? And it might sound strange to think about it this way, but actually we had so much more confidence in the rocket. So a couple months later, we launched early, and we were very aware at that time that what had happened to the rocket, why it had happened, and that preventative measures had been taken that it wasn't going to happen again. So we had a lot of confidence in the rocket, and we also had a lot of confidence in the abort system. Something that's interesting about that abort system is that system has been put on every Soyuz vehicle for as long as they've been built, and it was only the second time that it has rescued a crew, and it was only the first time that it had rescued a crew in the phase of flight that Nick was. So for us getting on the rocket, we had a really big confidence boost. In the test flight world, we always say you don't test an aircraft and an ejection seat at the same time. If you're testing an aircraft, have a proven ejection seat. And to us, this was a data point that said, hey, this abort system is really good, and in the worst of days, it can bring you back safely.
And liftoff. We have liftoff of Nick Hague, Christina Cook, and Alexei Ovchinin, now on their way to the International Space Station.
Beth, do you hear me?
Yes, Marty, I can hear you.
Isn't this cool? Sound is just vibrations through a medium like the air, or in this case, this string. It's vibrating and your ear interprets that, and that's how you hear me. Cool!
Okay, so what does this have to do with the International Space Station?
How do you think we communicate with the astronauts in low Earth orbit? The space station's in a vacuum. There's no air molecules to vibrate.
It's a little more complicated than two cans and a piece of string. For that, we use the Space Network, made up of special satellites, like the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite model behind us.
I kind of wondered why we were standing here.
First, for the sound to reach us, it has to be converted into microwaves. Those microwaves are sent through space to the Tracking and Data Relay Satellites that are in orbit around Earth, and then to the ground stations to be received.
That is a little bit more complex than my can and string.
Even though the ISS is going 17,500 miles per hour, about 250 miles away from Earth, through this space network we can still communicate and send other information to those on board, no matter where they are in orbit.
One of the cool things that we've gotten a chance to do is connect with the International Space Station for a downlink, allowing students to talk to astronauts while they're in orbit. Check it out.
STEM in 30, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is STEM in 30. How do you hear me?
And I have you loud and clear at the Air and Space Museum. Very good to be with you today.
Hi, Serena. This is Beth Wilson and Marty Kelsey, and we are really excited to be talking to you right now. We have a bunch of kids with a lot of questions, and to begin, Marty's got a question.
Serena, how has your first trip into space been so far?
You know, it has been outstanding. The rocket ride up here was absolutely amazing, and it's really fascinating to see how quickly your body gets used to moving in space and realizing you have so much more space to float in and fly in here than you do just by walking on the ground.
Hi, I'm Seth. What is your favorite experiment that you have done in the ISS, and how will it benefit us on Earth?
So one of the experiments I did the very first week with my crewmate Alex Gerst from Germany was something called myotones. And what that experiment did is it looked at Alex's muscles, and we basically are studying those muscles to see how he changes while he's up here during 6 months. And you may think, well, why is that important to me? Well, if you've ever been in the hospital for a long time, or maybe your grandma or grandpa, you know that when they come out of the hospital, sometimes they're really weak because they've been lying in a bed. And so we're trying to figure out how our muscles change because we think it's the same as it would be in grandma or grandpa in the hospital. Because for most of the day, we're floating around. You know, we're not using our leg muscles. And could we somehow keep them from not getting weak in the hospital? Could we develop new methods to keep them strong?
Hello, Serena. How do you do repairs on the space station?
So we'll often do repairs inside the space station. Like, for example, if the toilet breaks or anything like that, then we'll do repairs on that inside. But if a bigger piece of equipment breaks, then often we have to fix it on the outside of the space station. And if we do that, then we have to do a spacewalk. And we put on our 2 big spacesuits and head out the door. And we're talking with Mission Control in Houston the whole time to make sure that everything we're doing is correct. And it's a really important day when that happens on board the space station because everybody's involved and we want to make sure we keep everybody safe.
Let's check back in with Nick and Ann to learn about the tools they use on spacewalks. Got some tools here that you would use on a spacewalk. Do you want to tell us what these tools are and how you use them?
Sure. This first one is a safety tether. And this is one of our most important, if not the most important tool that we learn how to use on a spacewalk. This is what keeps us attached to the space station at all times. So no matter if we let go or if we're translating, if we're going anywhere on the station's about the size of a football field, and each one of these tethers can reach about 85 feet. Here we go. This is a load alleviating strap, we call it. And so if I pull really hard against the safety tether, that'll actually give a little bit. And then this piece is a reel, and this acts just like a retractable dog leash does. And so no matter how far we go on station, it keeps pulling and pulling and pulling, and this is a nice, strong, braided cable which keeps us safe. So if you listen to a spacewalk, you'll hear us talking about tethers a lot. We're always aware of where these are, where they're anchored, and where our cables are.
Now there's one other piece of equipment that y'all didn't mention that's used on a spacewalk. We've got a little bit of science and a little bit of magic that we're going to try to learn about that. So if you all can take the water and pour it into one of the cups.
We'll pick the middle one.
All right. Now we're going to shuffle the cups.
Okay.
All right.
Want to do the shuffling?
Yep.
Shuffle them up.
Okay.
If you're watching, follow the one with the water in it. See if you can pick out which one it is. All right, which one do you think has the water in it? All right, which one?
Well, what?
I lost track.
Let's see, does that one have the water? Not that one. If you guessed that one, you were wrong. How about the one over there?
That one.
Oh, no water in that
Woo!
one. All right, how about the middle one?
All right. Well, let's see. How did that go? Oh, like that.
Oh, where did the water go?
Wait a minute.
We did put a little something into the cup before we started.
And this science goes back to a really important piece of equipment that you all need when you're on a spacewalk.
Y'all want to tell us about this?
Sure. It actually is a really important piece of equipment. So I mentioned we do a 6-hour spacewalk or 7-hour spacewalk, but you're actually in the spacesuit for almost 12 hours. And so if you can imagine, you might have to go to the bathroom.
Yep.
And so this is our MAG, our maximum absorbency garment, or as everybody else would call it, a diaper.
Yeah, so the next time you're watching a spacewalk, think about all the equipment that we're using that you can see and the equipment that you can't see.
St. Jock and Cook now moving Nick Hague back inside. He'll be placed on the rack on the side wall of the equipment lock. First, they'll take a simplified aid for EVA rescue unit off of his suit. That will be stowed, as will be the case for Ann McLean a few moments from now.
Serena, we have another question.
Hi, my name is Laurel, and my question is, if you could build another space station, what would you do to improve it?
You think about all the trash cans you use in your house and on Earth on a daily basis. Very easy to throw things away, and it is for us up here too. The problem is, for a period of time, we have to live with our trash. We can't throw it on the curb and have the trash men come pick it up. So we are very careful about sealing and isolating things, but trash builds up really quickly when you're having to live with it. And we just don't see that on Earth because we give it to the trash men every day and let them take care of it. And so we need a good way for us to handle trash up here and get rid of it in a much, much easier way. Because right now we send it down on our visiting vehicles, on our cargo vehicles that come up. We actually pack those full with a lot of trash sometimes to get it off the space station.
The International Space Station is very complex. And I'm not just talking about this model that has a lot of pieces to it. The first segment was launched in 1998, and humans first occupied it in the year 2000. I'm going to share a few more facts with you as I build this model, or at least attempt to build this model. Here we go! The ISS is made up of 16 pressurized modules. These modules provide visitors to the ISS with life support systems, bathrooms, storage, research laboratories, an observation cupola, and places to eat, sleep, and exercise. The Microgravity Laboratory has hosted more than 2,700 research investigations from researchers in more than 103 countries. More than 3 million lines of software code on the ground support more than 1.5 million lines of flight software code. Whew! Done! I just hope it looks this good in 20 years. Now, let's head over to NASA astronaut David Wolf, who helped build the space station, to see how you can get involved in designing new segments of the station.
Hello, this is astronaut David Wolf. I spent 23 years as an astronaut, flying 4 missions, 168 days in space. During that time, we flew 135 space shuttle missions. We used the space shuttle to build the International Space Station. And we did a really good job, but it didn't come out perfect. After 20 years of living on board that space station, we hope that you can help us identify those problems and solutions to those and make 3-dimensional models for those.
Hello,
My name is Joel, and I'm an explainer here at the National Air and Space Museum teaching science. And today we're going to do a little bit of junk science. So you've heard astronauts talk about how the International Space Station was built, rearranged, and has to constantly be maintained. Now we're going to pass the ball to you. We would like you to design and build your own module for the International Space Station. A great way to do this is to use an empty 2-liter bottle. I think I'm going to build a little bit of a storage unit. So this is what I came up with, but what will you come up with? Do you want to put maybe a movie theater, a library, a gym to keep your astronauts fit and healthy? We can't wait to see what you come up with.
This is Canadarm. It was used to help astronauts on spacewalks as well as to move modules on the International Space Station.
And once all of these modules were assembled, the space inside was larger than a 6-bedroom house.
A normal crew has between 3 and 6 members, so that may seem like a lot of room until you remember that you can't leave.
And you really get to know a person after living and working with them for months at a time.
Let's see how well Nick and Ann knew each other after their most recent space flight in a little game we like to call Know Your Crewmate.
Hello and welcome to Know Your Crewmate. I'm Ryan Shank, and I'm joined by 2 NASA astronauts, Nick Hague and Ann McLean. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
I'm going to be asking you 2 questions about each other to figure out how well you actually know your crewmate.
Okay.
So this first question is going to be about Ann. What is Ann's favorite thing to fly?
Okay.
The ISS.
Oh.
And what did you put?
He is right-ish, but I always go with my first love, helicopters.
But ever since she landed, all I hear is how she wants to go back to space. So
this is true. I think you might be right.
This next question is about Nick. Does Nick enjoy mountains or the beach more? What do you think?
So, I think Nick enjoys both of them, although growing up in Kansas, he didn't have a lot of either of them. But I happen to know that he really enjoys spending time in the mountains with his family, so I went with mountains.
You betcha. Mountains, northern Idaho, next to a big lake with the family.
Interestingly, we tried to catch that lake many times from the cupola, and it took us about a month before we could find the lake. The lakes that seem really, really big on Earth, you pass over just in no time in space, so we had a little bit of a challenge.
This next question is about Ann. What was Ann's favorite food on the ISS?
So I'm going with the one that you enjoyed the most, not the one that you indulged in the most.
Oh.
Yes. Okay, so
Gonna nail it.
I said chocolate pudding cake.
Chocolate pudding cake.
There it is. What is the most annoying thing Nick did when he was on the ISS?
Oh.
I think people imagine you would get on each other's nerves, but you really don't. Like, you're such in the same predicament that if anything was annoying you, it usually was something that we were projecting onto the ground, right? So I can think of one.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I'm not even going to write down the answer. I just wondered what this was. This is a debrief point.
But we were up there for 3.5 months before Nick and Christina came, and we're used to, in that time you get really used to what you have, and I got used to, your food is one thing that you always have. You know what you have, you know what your crewmate likes and everything like that. But when Nick arrived, I had somebody else that liked to eat M&Ms.
That's a competition for those M&Ms.
Scarce.
Which was actually probably very good for me.
Well, one final question for both of you. Why is it important to know your crewmate while you're on the International Space Station?
I think it's important not only to know your crewmates, but to be vulnerable enough to allow yourself to be known, because when you are in a small vehicle accomplishing a really challenging mission for 6.5 months, there's no hiding places. So your crewmates are going to know your strengths, your weaknesses. They're going to know what type of crewmate you are, how you enjoy relaxing, where you get your energy from, what it takes for you to get up for a big event.
Up there, we depend on each other. Our lives depend on each other. And so you want to know that person as well as you can. And before we ever launch, we know each other and we're friends with each other. And you don't go to the station in this small space with strangers. You go there with family, and you know your family.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. Now let's check back in with Marty and Beth.
There have been hundreds of astronauts and cosmonauts who have spent time on the International Space Station, like our friends Nick and Ann and Serena. They are incredibly talented, hardworking individuals, but it might surprise you, they're a lot like you and me.
I always thought being an astronaut would be neat, but I never thought of it as something that was a real possibility for normal people like me. I got invited to work at NASA in the astronaut office, not as an astronaut. So I would say that played a large role in me believing that it was a real possibility, that normal people were doing the job or people that I could relate to. And I started to be able to envision myself doing that job. So that helped me out. That was something that I think other people probably did better envisioning themselves doing than I did. For me, that was a crucial step in the process, was actually being exposed to astronauts.
I think if you get to know most astronauts or most of the people that that work at NASA, when you first think about that, you're like, wow, these people are, you know, these very rare individuals, but we're not. We're just regular people. You know, we had dreams and we worked hard to get there. And so I think if we can share our story and our passion for science, you know, I think that might rub off on some of the students and hopefully inspire them to do the same thing.
It's interesting, you show up in this flight suit, you know, with that title, that job title, and people say, hell, you're smart, and they think about success. But I can tell you, most folks that have that title and wear this uniform have probably failed at more things. I have failed at more things than your average person. But that's probably because I have attempted more things than the average person. It's such a broad job. Your interests need to be broader than your ability to pursue them and accomplish them. And if you're the kind of person who seeks new things and you like challenges, then this job is going to be good for you.
A lot of kids come up to me and say, hey, what should I go into? What will NASA like? And so what I like to tell them is, man, don't pick a field that you think NASA's going to like. Pick a field that you love and that you're interested in. I went into medicine and I'm still a physician today because it's what I love doing.
To master something takes one word, and that is work. And a lot of people, they think astronauts are geniuses, and I'm here to tell you they're not. You don't have to be an Einstein to do our job, but what you do need is a sense of determination and hard work. And there is nothing that I know or that any of my colleagues know that they didn't know only because of determination and hard work. And so if you want to do something, don't think you're not smart enough, just think that you really have to work for it, and you can get it.
The International Space Station has spent the last 20 years monitoring natural disasters, helping develop improved vaccines, and conducting experiments that benefit us here on Earth.
It has also allowed students the opportunity to try out their own space-based experiments, and it is preparing us for longer duration spaceflight.
What do you think the next 20 years will bring?
If you like this video, be sure to follow STEM in 30 on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe to the National Air and Space Museum's YouTube channel.
Thanks for watching. Serena, thank you so much for talking with us today. We want to present you with a 3D printed challenge coin that was designed by a middle school student named Emily. When you get back to Earth, please come by the museum to collect it.